Welcome to episode 1 of the Debate Icons show. The first participants in this episode are Grace Kinyua from USIU Africa and Mohammed Abdullahi from the University of Nairobi. In this episode, they shall be engaging the motion, "This House believes that no employer should fire employees during the COVID-19 period."
Welcome, debaters. My name is Amolo Simba. I'm the chair of the panel. With me are panelists Nixon Ochieng on my right and Jerry Kariuki on my left. I will invite the proposer, Grace Kinyua, to take the floor. With me.
Panel, we live in a world whereby the COVID-19 pandemic is a reality. It's a thing that is here. And the definition of a pandemic not only stems about something that has erupted, but something that is here to stay. Now, the problem in this particular debate is there are people who are actually employees and there are people who are employers. Now, allow me to properly define this for the purpose of this motion. First of all, an employer is any person who attains another person for the purpose of them providing a service or a good, and then they offer compensation to them based on an agreed upon contract. Therefore, this does not limit us to any price range or even monetary kinds of compensation for works, but rather any person who's offering compensation for any services or goods rendered. That is first. Then secondly, the idea to fire means to terminate in entirety the agreement of this compensation based on services rendered and compensation offered. Now, again, part of the status quo is that there are tough times in business. People are not able to they're not making the same money that they're making owing to some businesses being shut down, some not being able to actually work properly. This is true. This is a reality today. And also within the status quo is the fact that there are businesses which are reopening. There are also businesses that are working in the digital space as well. These are also things within the status quo. Therefore, it does not mean that all employers are terminating all their employees in this particular pandemic. Again, there have been alternatives that have been showed by different employers owing to these tough times, which we recognize in this house today as team proposition. Now, we offer to you the fact that there are some who have gone the way of offering pay cuts to their employees because they're not able to pay them the full amount in this particular time of the pandemic. There's some who've also renegotiated their contract for compensation. Therefore, they're offering a different compensation for the services that are rendered. Therefore, the problem in this house today is that this pandemic has affected businesses, but then the question is, how do we then maneuver that? And really, is firing these employees the solution to go with today? Now, I'll offer my points before I tell you what this debate is not about. So first of all, this particular pandemic has extremely devastating effects, but it is even worse when we actually terminate and completely remove and completely fire these employees, because it wasn't a problem for two people, both the employer and the employee. To where exactly do these particular employees go? Some of them have to move back. Does that then mean that you create a further problem in this particular state? And then again, because this pandemic is going to be solved at one point in time, or we're going to find a way to live or even to lean into it, what exactly happens? Do employers now start putting up positions for new employees to come in? How exactly are they supposed to do that? Are their businesses supposed to shut down entirely simply because when this particular pandemic, again, this is not in any way to argue that this pandemic has not caused devastating effects. Therefore, the greatest good for the greatest number of people is that we actually look to alternatives for this particular pandemic. Secondly, businesses, employers of any kind actually, look at even employers within the home setting, within the agricultural setting, have more to gain should they then keep their employees, because they can find new and innovative ways to actually do their business. We've seen different businesses going into the digital space. We've seen them going into other alternatives of doing things. They've been forced, owing to this pandemic, to come up with new ideas, new ways of doing things. If anything, I would say that in some shape or form, that this pandemic has been of benefit to them, because they're able to renegotiate what exactly are we doing, what exactly is the essence of an employee, what is their importance. And we can see that we've clearly seen, even within the health sectors, we've seen that there has been a greater importance. These people who are able to actually see the fact that these people are important and we need to do better. We've seen parents talking about teachers and their payment. Therefore, again, I argue to you that this particular pandemic offers a great opportunity to lean in and to find new and innovative ways to actually do things for both employers and employees. third, what exactly would be the backlash of this particular act of terminating employees? I offer to you, first of all, that it sets a very poor precedent that whenever there's a pandemic, whenever there's a problem, what we do, instead of taking care of our people, what we do is that we shun them away and we say, we do not have money for you, we do not have compensation for you. And this sets a poor precedent. This is a bad look on employers across the board, whether in whatever sector you think of. Therefore, I think companies and employers in themselves would actually be better suited to keep their employees and find new and innovative ways to actually keep them, as opposed to terminating them completely, because there's a social backlash on them and even their image as companies. This debate is not about the fact that there's no money. Again, I've offered that compensation can be in many different forms. This debate is not about the fact that there's a pandemic, because the pandemic is here to stay, and we offer to you again, what exactly happens when the next pandemic hits? Is firing these people the solution? Does it solve the pandemic? Does it solve your business problems? Does it solve anything within regarding your business as an employer? And what exactly is the effect on the employee? Unless opposition can answer these questions, then they fail completely in this debate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Proposer. Now we go to the opposer. I would want to invite the opposer, Mohammed Abdullahi.
So panel, the debate is about competing needs and competing interests, and I have to justify that whereas the proposition argues that the retention of employees, even during this pandemic by businesses, has benefits in the long run for employers, I will have to compete that against the benefits that businesses accrue if they fire employees during the pandemic. And I'll try and answer all the questions that she's asked. The proposition argues that businesses have more to benefit in the event that they choose to retain their employees during the pandemic. We will be arguing the opposite, that businesses generally, and especially businesses which cannot continue to pay the salaries of their workers, have more to benefit in the event that they choose to fire their employees. The proposition did not touch on something that I would thought would have been the basis of their argument, but I'll try and touch on that. I assumed that the proposition was going to suggest issues like unpaid leave. Let's send these employees on unpaid leave. Let us not fire them. That would have been a solution for businesses. But I'll also tell you why that, in our world, is not beneficial for businesses and companies in the long run. I will equally answer the question of, does it solve the problems that businesses are facing during the pandemic if they choose to fire their employees? So panel, from an economic perspective, on why it is better for employers to fire their employees rather than retain them during this pandemic. Businesses generally have facing needs. They have to pay their rents, they have to pay utilities, they have to pay taxes, accrued taxes, they have to pay all of those benefits. So you would assume that with all these needs constant, businesses cannot easily move out of their premises because they have signed long-term leases, because they are known in these premises, and they continue to pay to landlords these rents. They have that need. There is absolutely no business. We've been shut down by the pandemic. We are not selling. So with these two needs, whereas we have to choose to pay our rents against, do we continue to retain employees and continue to pay their salaries in compensation for the services they usually offer them, even though during this pandemic they are not offering them? Which should we choose? And we think that for such businesses, it will be a wiser decision to fire their employees and to not pay compensation for the services which are not being rendered, but rather choose to pay for the premises where the equipment, their business is still based. That will be a more pragmatic decision to make, because moving out of these premises necessarily means an end to the business. Do we choose then which is better? Do we continue to retain the business? A business which today cannot continue to pay their employees, but if things go well and we get out of the pandemic, a business which will create jobs, because those jobs will come back, not now. They are not present today. We do not need a cleaner if our premises are closed. We cannot continue to pay for a service that is not being rendered. That is the economic argument. Panel, we will argue that the domino effect of retaining employees and going to pay for compensation is worse for the economy in the long run. What we want is businesses to come out of the pandemic, to continue to exist, albeit they downscale or all of that. But what we want is for businesses to continue to exist, because we believe that these jobs, with demand and supply, tomorrow we will need more water to be for the market, because the markets have opened up. Those companies, those jobs will come back when the demand comes back. The jobs do not exist today. So the domino effect of us continuing to pay for those services, whereas compared to businesses retaining that cash or that liquidity for when businesses resume, so that they can come back to their operations and businesses can continue to run. We think that that long run benefit is better in our world when we fire employees today for the long run benefit of businesses. Panel, we will also tell you about businesses rebounding. Businesses rebounding after such a pandemic, after such a devastating pandemic, takes time. The coming back after the 2008 financial crisis took us up until 2013, 2014. That is what businesses will face even after this pandemic, with the choice to continue to pay for a service, or whereas to maintain that liquidity, that cash, because we are going to need it for operations when we come back. We think that the rebounding of the economy in the long run, generally speaking, for all businesses, is better that we fire those employees today and that we do not continue to pay for those services, because we will need to bounce back from the effects of the pandemic.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the replies. It's time for the proposer to give their reply. Welcome.
Panel, opposition completely misses the point in this debate. They offer to us facing needs, paying rent, things of that nature, not offering services. And again, we offer to you, this is a great generalization. There are businesses that are still running, do not require these physical locations. But even if you take them at their best and say that, yes, they do have needs, then do you prioritize the needs of this particular expenses, which you would have paid still, which are accounted for in businesses' expenditures? Or do you then say, no, we shall terminate our employees who actually make our business and then go ahead and actually pay for this particular needs? And again, we offer to you, businesses don't wake up one day and use all the money spent in one day today to pay the rent. They have accrued monies that they have. And you talk about jobs will come back, rebounding of the economy, and that's that's perfectly fine. But the idea with sustainable solutions is that they serve the now and the tomorrow. This solution only serves tomorrow. Tomorrow, we shall have jobs. Tomorrow, jobs shall come back. But what happens in the present? And that is the problem in the house today. And as you offer, this solution only is the fact that there can be other alternatives which are perfectly fine. Therefore, what you fail to do in this particular house is to answer the question in the house. What happens to these particular employees? What happens to these businesses? Do they all shut down and close owing to this pandemic? How long does the pandemic last? Can anyone answer that tomorrow? We cannot. So what we can do instead is lean into this particular pandemic and find the advantages. We can properly set up businesses. What happens to these businesses? Panel, opposition alternatives which are perfectly sustainable. They offer to us facing needs, paying rent, instead is to answer the question and find the advantages. Generalization. There are businesses that are still running, do not require these physical locations. But even if you take them at their best, how long does a pandemic last? Yes, they do have needs. Then do you prioritize the needs of services this particular expenses which you would have paid still, which are accounted for in business expenditures? Or do you then say, no, we shall terminate our employees who actually make our business and then go ahead and actually prioritize the needs of pay for this particular needs? And again, we offer to you, which are accounted for in business and use all the money spent in one day today to pay the rent. Do you then say, no, we shall terminate our employees who actually jobs will come back and then rebounding of the economy and go ahead and actually that's pay for this particular needs. But the idea business sustainable all the money spent in one day, the now and the tomorrow. And again, this solution only have tomorrow. Employees who shall have jobs. Rebounding of the economy and come back. But what happens in the present? And that is the problem in the house today. And as you offer quite aptly is the fact that there can be other alternatives which are perfectly fine. Therefore, what you feel to money that they have, you need to answer the question, what happens, but what happens in the present and that what happens. And as you offer, do they all shut down in the house close quite aptly is that tomorrow? How long does the pandemic last? Can anyone answer that question? We cannot. So what we can do instead is lean into this particular pandemic and find the advantages these
can
particular
properly set up
employees,
businesses
do they
that they
all
have
shut
a good
down and
public
close
image?
owing
What
to
we
this
can do
pandemic? Is that
how
to
long
take
does a
care of the
pandemic last?
extremities
Can anyone
of this
answer that?
fine.
Therefore,
Pandemic
what we
on
can
both
do
the
instead
employer
is
and the
lean
employee
into
by
this
retaining
particular
this
pandemic
particular
and find the
employees
advantages.
and looking for
What
other
happens
alternatives
such as
businesses
unpaid
that they
leave,
have a good-
cuts
we
in
can
pays and things of
properly
that
set up
nature, and
public image. What we can
renegotiating other forms of compensation for these particular employees. Thank you for your time.
Now it's time to get the reply from the opposer. Thank you.
So panel, proposition brings the argument of accrued income, that when business was good, businesses were making money, and whereas they were not spending all of that money for operations, they were saving part of it. We totally agree. However, what happens today when our business is working at 50% capacity? We were operating at 100% capacity. That is why we were able to continue to run and pay for operations and all of that. Our business has been downscaled by half. So that means our income has equally been downscaled by half. We have to supplement that income. Where do we get the money to supplement that income? We get it from our accrued income. We are paying for those incomes today from our accrued income. However, the needs of yesterday are the same needs of today. We prioritize those needs, which one's way above the other, and we choose that for the normal operation of a business, rent and paying suppliers and paying vendors and all of that is a better way, is the better strategy from a business perspective to spend that money there rather than to pay for employees who are not rendering a service. If we've been downscaled by 50%, it generally means that our workforce has to equally be downscaled by 50% because we're working at 50% capacity. We will pay for the 50% who are working for us today. We will not pay the other 50%. What will we do to them? We think that it's a better business and economic argument to fire those employees. Yes, proposition makes this beautiful argument of what happens to them, and there are other ways to compensate, and that they make up the business. Yes, employees are good people. They run these businesses. However, when it comes to whose money is getting lost, and whose capital investment is getting lost, and whose business is going down the drain, whose business will auctioneers come for, whose business will be mortgaged, panel, I feel that that question falls on the business owner, and the business owner has to make a pragmatic financial decision. That pragmatic financial decision is to fire employees. Thank you.
Thank you, debaters. It has been a lovely debate. Now it's time for the judges to deliberate, then we'll give you the feedback.